I'm Tom Bennett, 42 years old, 2 decades into a quiet life as a handyman in northern Wisconsin, up near the Michigan border. I fix fences, clear snow, gut deer, help neighbors patch up roofs, that kind of thing. My wife, Sandra, works part-time at the clinic, and we have a daughter, Ellie, who just turned 7. You hear a lot of things in small towns like mine. Not just sounds, but gossip and rumors no sane mind could ever come up with. The kind that starts over coffee and spreads like wildfire through bars, gas stations, and church parking lots. People talk like they're the main characters in a horror movie, but I always figured it was just the usual rural cocktail of isolation, boredom, and booze. It's not that hard to mistake a calf for a giant bear when you've got 15 beers in your system. Boredom and isolation don't help. Folks up here sometimes get twitchy when the dark comes early. That's why I never paid attention when someone swore they saw something out by the tree line. Some thing on 2 legs. I figured they were effed in the head or simply starved for drama, until I saw that thing myself. The rumor mill really picked up speed a few months ago in June. We don't have pets, but it's hard not to notice when half the damn town suddenly starts whispering about dogs vanishing. Not running off, vanishing, as in being taken. Yanked straight from backyards and kennels in the dead of night. One minute they're barking at the wind. The next minute there's a toppled gate, claw marks in the dirt, and a trail of blood smeared across the porch. Not a trace left, but shredded leashes, busted fences, and stains no one can scrub clean. Bloody messes that stay in your shant longer than they should. The kind of scenes that make grown men second-guess letting their kids out, even during the day. At first I figured it was a cougar or a black bear. We occasionally get one here, but then people started finding deer too, or what was left of them. I saw one on the logging trail behind Miller's property. Half its chest cavity was just gone, torn open like a roast. The odd thing was that the hindquarters were untouched, like something had gone straight for the organs and left the rest. After that, my theory changed. I stopped thinking about cougars or bears, started wondering if we had some kind of sick bastard out here, some weirdo torturing animals for fun, maybe using them in rituals. It wouldn't be the first time some recluse out in the woods went off the deep end. The idea of a man doing this seemed more believable than that of a simple predator. Still horrifying, but at least human. That made it easier to explain, at least for a while. Then came the trail cam photos. I was drinking coffee with Neil, the owner of the local feed store, when he pulled out his phone and showed me this blurry still. Big shape, upright, fur all over. Not a bear, he said. Too lean in the waist, too broad in the shoulders. And the eyes, they shone like 2 hot coals in the infrared. Maybe just a guy in a ghillie suit, I said, though I wasn't convinced. But I still smiled like I was. Then he mentioned something else. Said one of his regulars had come in a few days earlier, spooked out of his mind. Guy owns a small cattle operation on the edge of town. Said something got into his barn in the middle of the night. Killed one of his calves outright. Injured a few of the cows, too. Deep gouges down their flanks. Claw marks. The kind spaced wide enough to make you question what the hell kind of animal could have done it. Neil swore the guy was dead sober, rattled to his core. Said he hadn't seen anything himself, but the blood trail and damage didn't lie. Neil swore it was a Bigfoot. Not just any Bigfoot, either. A googway, he called it. Some kind of aggressive, flesh-eating cousin of Sasquatch that's supposedly more canine than ape. Said he'd been reading up on them for years. Claimed some tracks found last fall near the mill matched descriptions from old First Nations stories. I just nodded. Let him talk. That's Neil. Always chasing shadows. Always one step away from building a bunker out back. He's a good guy, but also the type to buy into government weather machines and just about any conspiracy theory you've ever heard of. I believed something happened out there with that calf, no doubt. But Neil? He was absolutely convinced of his nonsense, trying to link it to his latest monster of the month. I consider myself a rational person whose worldview is deeply rooted in science. My brain doesn't do monsters, never has. Still, I also started noticing things soon after. Something seemed amiss. The way the woods behind the house got quiet sometimes, real quiet, like the birds were scared of something. The way Ellie said she didn't want to play in the backyard anymore because the trees have eyes. And then there was the smell. Twice when I was checking the septic line near the tree line, I caught a strong stench, like rot and wet dog. Not subtle, overwhelming. Made me gag immediately. Nothing visible, not even a dead raccoon. No carcass, no feathers, no bones. Just that damn smell. It lingered, thick in the air, even after I stepped away. I walked the perimeter twice, flashlight beam cutting through the trees, but saw nothing. No movement. No eyes watching back. I couldn't explain it. Couldn't find a reason for that stench to suddenly appear and hit so hard. And yet, I still felt like something was out there. Close, just out of sight. Back then I told myself it was just a fox den, maybe a dead buck buried under the snowpack. But if I'm being honest, it felt like I was being watched. After a few weeks, things went quiet again. The strange sightings, the missing dogs, the shredded deer, they stopped making the rounds in local gossip. No more blurry trail cam photos. No new stories from Neil. It was like whatever had stirred up the fear and speculation had moved on or gone dormant. Life slipped back into its usual routines. School runs, work orders, dinners with family. My mind had moved on completely. Then, one night, everything changed. It was a Sunday, mid-September, the kind of windy, rainy autumn night that makes the roads slick and the wipers work overtime. Not ideal driving conditions, but not too terrible either. Just steady enough to keep you alert. We'd stayed too long at Sandra's sister's place in Crandon. Birthday dinner, too much cake, and a house full of noise and laughter. Despite the weather, the drive home was quiet and peaceful. Ellie was curled up in the back seat, sound asleep with her head tucked under a blanket. Sandra had dozed off in the passenger seat not long after we turned onto the highway, her face soft in the glow of the dashboard lights. I was at the wheel, tired but content, the kind of tired that feels earned. The radio played some old country ballad low in the background, and I found myself thinking that, for all the things I didn't have, I was grateful for what I did. My girls, my little life. I was doing maybe 50. Not too fast, but not crawling either. Just trying to get us home in one piece before midnight. That's when it happened. Not 5 miles from our hometown. Out of nowhere, a large shape darted out from the trees on the right side of the road. I didn't even have time to process. 1 second, the road ahead was clear. The next, something. A blur of dark fur appeared in the beam of my headlights. Instinct took over. I swerved hard to the right, jerking the wheel without thinking. Despite my quick reaction, I clipped the thing with the front left corner of my F-150. The sound it made was dense and meaty, like hitting a heavy side of beef with a sledgehammer. I saw the shape crumple and roll across the pavement for a split second before it vanished into the darkness beyond the beams. It wasn't a clean hit, more like a brutal glancing blow that had enough force to send it spinning off into the roadside brush. It must have been quite heavy as the whole truck shuddered from the impact, and I felt the wheel jerk hard in my hands as the tires slipped on the wet asphalt. Swerving without slowing down was a mistake, especially in weather like this. The wet asphalt turned slick as glass under my tires, and the truck began to slide immediately. The steering wheel jerked in my hands, and for a second, I thought we were going into the ditch for sure. Rain hammered the windshield, and mud sprayed up from the shoulder as the tires lost traction. The back end swung out violently, fishtailing one way, then the other. I fought it the whole way, knuckles white, heart pounding, vision tunneling. The weight of the truck shifted hard, almost tipping as the rear wheels caught a rut. It took every ounce of control and a good bit of luck to keep us upright. Finally, after what felt like a mile but was probably just over 100 yards, I managed to wrangle the F-150 to a shuddering, diagonal stop just short of the opposite ditch. Ellie woke up crying, her voice small and scared in the back seat. Sandra jolted upright in the passenger seat, disoriented and blinking fast. "Tom? What? What the hell was that? Did we hit something?" My wife called out, now wide awake. I took a breath, hands locked on the steering wheel, heart hammering in my chest. "Yeah, I said. Something ran out in front of us. I think I clipped it. Jesus, she muttered, reaching back to comfort Ellie. You okay, sweetie? You okay? Ellie just whimpered and clung to her stuffed rabbit, tears streaking down her cheeks. I turned in my seat, doing my best to reassure them both. It's okay. Everyone's okay. We're fine. I just wasn't expecting that. Came out of nowhere. Sandra looked at me. What was it? I don't know. Maybe a big dog? I didn't see it clearly. We sat there for a moment, the rain pattering against the roof, wipers still squeaking back and forth. I checked the rearview mirror, scanning the dark stretch of road we'd just barreled down. The taillights lit up the wet asphalt in a red sheen, but there was nothing there. Whatever we hit wasn't sprawled out behind us. Either it had managed to crawl off the road, or it had been flung all the way into the ditch. Sandra frowned, already unbuckling her seatbelt. If you think it was a dog, we should check. If it's hurt, we can't just leave it. What if it crawled off into the ditch and is suffering out there? We should at least look. Maybe we can still save it. That's my wife, always the better human being. I sighed and popped the glove box, pulling out the small flashlight I kept in there for roadside repairs. All right, I'll go take a look. Just keep the doors locked, okay? Stay in the truck. She nodded, her face tense but resolute. As I stepped out into the rain, the cold hit me instantly, carried on gusts of wind that pushed the drizzle sideways and hissed through the tall pines. I pulled my jacket tight around me, clicked on the flashlight, and started walking back down the road, boots crunching on the wet asphalt. I swung the beam from left to right, sweeping across the ditches on both sides of the road. We were in a patch of forest, boxed in by dense trees and underbrush, easily thick enough to hide a dog, or even a large bear. Shadows shifted between the pines, and every branch looked like it was holding its breath. The ditch on my right was filled with rainwater and matted leaves, the one on the left choked with brush. I kept scanning, expecting to find a mangled body that would haunt for days to come. The beam caught glints of wet bark, slick mud, swaying limbs, but no sign of what we hit. Just endless dark woods pressing in on both sides like a narrowing throat. I was certain that I had hit it, and the impact had been quite severe. There's no way the animal could have just walked away from that, regardless of what it actually was. I just hoped to God it was dead. Otherwise, I'd have to put it out of its misery, and then explain to my girls why I didn't save its life. After another 50 yards of walking, the ground sloped sharply down on what was the right side of the road from my perspective. The flashlight beam cut across a steep ravine, maybe 8 or 10 feet deep, the earth slick with mud and tangled with wet roots and rocks. It was the same side that the thing had disappeared toward after the collision, roughly the right distance, too. I paused, scanning the tree line again, then swept the light down into the gully. Trees leaned in from both sides, their trunks crowding close together like spectators, and the underbrush grew much thicker at the bottom. I couldn't see much of anything from where I stood, just shifting shadows and the vague glint of rainwater pooling in dips between the roots. If the thing had tumbled down this slope, it would have vanished fast into the cover. I hesitated. I didn't want to go down there. I really didn't. But I could already hear Sandra's voice in my head. At least try, Tom. And she was right. I couldn't just walk away and pretend I didn't see anything. So I made my way to the edge and started the climb down into the ravine, bracing with one hand on the trunk of a pine as my boots slipped on the wet boulders. The rain had turned everything slick, the rocks loose and treacherous. Branches whipped at my arms, and thorny vines tugged at my pant legs. I half-slid the last few feet and landed in a crouch, knees soaking through in the wet brush. I swept the light forward, and there it was. A dark shape, low and still, lay about 20 yards down the ravine floor. Big, maybe too big to be a dog. My first thought was bear, but the shape looked too slender for a black bear. I swallowed hard, then, for whatever stupid reason, made the snap decision to get closer and check it out. My breath caught. I could hear my pulse in my ears. The thing wasn't moving. I inched closer, one step at a time, flashlight locked onto the shape, which was still too far away to make out details. I inched closer, one step at a time, flashlight locked onto the shape, which was still too far away to make out details. Then it moved. Not a twitch. Not the unconscious spasm of a dying animal. It shifted with clear purpose. The head lifted first, lupine in shape, unmistakably so, but wrong in ways that made my stomach knot. The snout was broader than any wolf's I'd ever seen, too squared at the end, as if the bone beneath had been reshaped. The skull bulged in odd places, round and uneven, as if it had been warped or broken and never healed properly. It looked less like it had grown that way, and more like it had been forcibly stretched into a form it was never meant to take. Its fur was dark and thick, but patchy in spots, clumped and soaked with rain and what looked like blood, revealing pale skin underneath that looked disturbingly human. Then its pointy ears twitched and rose, snapping toward me like little radar dishes, and the eyes, God help me, those eyes locked onto mine. The flashlight caught them perfectly, and for a moment, they burned in the dark like molten metal. Reflective eyes, forward-facing, providing binocular vision for accurate depth perception. Whatever I was looking at was definitely a predator. Then its entire body began to move, unfolding itself from the gravelly bed of the ravine with visible effort. Its torso was broad, its limbs long and slender. Then a small detail caught my eye. I saw fingers, real, jointed fingers, but ending in black claws. Despite the shape of its head and claws, this thing somehow looked disturbingly human. Slowly, it rolled and pushed itself up, not onto 2 legs, but 4. Staring at it, I realized that its frame might very well be capable of walking upright. There was a disturbing fluidity to the way it moved, like a grotesque blend of man and predator. Its eyes firmly locked on me. It growled, low and broken, like an engine running on broken parts. Its dark lips peeled back, exposing a full set of jagged, uneven teeth, not just huge but mismatched, like they were pulled from several different beasts and shoved into a jaw that didn't quite know what to do with them. It stepped forward, dragging its rear right leg awkwardly behind it. That leg was shattered. I could see the wrong bend in the bone, the way it refused to support any weight. But even so, the thing advanced, slow and deliberate, as if sheer hatred was pulling it forward. It wasn't limping like a wounded animal. It was coming for me, clearly unhappy about the disturbance. The growls continued and grew more threatening. I stood there frozen, breath shallow, mind screaming that I was looking at something that should not exist. My brain offered the only word that made any kind of sense: werewolf. I don't know how long I stood there. A second? 2? Long enough for it to come closer, and for the smell to hit me in full. Not just blood and wet fur, but rot. Thick, putrid, undeniable rot. It made my eyes water and my stomach twist, and then I recognized it. That same stench I'd caught months ago, near the tree line behind our house. The same rancid odor I'd blamed on a fox den or a dead deer buried under brush. It hadn't been either of those. This thing had been at my house, had probably watched me from the underbrush as I tried to make sense of what was going on at the time. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. That broke whatever spell I was under. I had to get out of there and away from this creature. I stumbled, nearly dropping the flashlight, as I began to back away from the advancing creature. Then I turned and climbed like my life depended on it, because it did. Every muscle in my body screamed as I tackled the wet boulders, grabbing at roots and saplings for support, slipping, catching myself, and dragging my way up as quickly as I could. All I could think about was getting out of that damn ravine and back to the road, back to the truck, and away from this nightmarish being. I heard it behind me as I climbed, too close. Branches snapped, claws tore at the mud, and that awful, grinding snarl followed me up the slope like a shadow with teeth. I dared a glance over my shoulder and saw its outstretched hand reaching for my leg. Despite the shattered leg, the damn thing was climbing with terrifying speed. One clawed hand was enough to pull its misshapen body forward, while the other was busy reaching for me. I slipped twice, caught myself on a root, adrenaline drowning out the pain. With a final push, I scrambled the last few feet and hurled myself over the lip of the ravine, sneakers skidding as I finally reached the wet asphalt. When I turned around, I saw it crawl out of the ravine, not 20 feet behind me, dragging its mangled leg into view, eyes still locked on mine. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. My legs felt like they were moving through molasses, but the terror pushed me forward, down the middle of the rain-slicked road. Behind me I heard it, the scrape and clack of claws on wet asphalt, uneven, but fast. It was still following me. Then, I noticed movement up ahead. The truck was turning back onto the road. Its headlights swung toward me, and for one dizzying second, I thought Sandra hadn't seen me. But then the beams locked on, and the engine revved. The front wheels straightened, and the truck shunted heading toward me. At first, I thought she was coming to pick me up. Relief flooded me for half a heartbeat, but something was off. The truck wasn't slowing down. It was accelerating, fast, too fast. That's when I realized she wasn't coming for me at all. She was aiming for the thing behind me. I veered off to the side, heart pounding, lungs burning, and dove at the last moment as the roar of the F-150's V8 surged past me, high beams flooding the road and the tree line beyond in white-hot light. But the creature moved too. It twisted its body unnaturally, flinging itself toward the trees at the last second. Even with its mangled leg, it managed to dart off into the underbrush half a second before the truck could connect. The vehicle missed it by mere inches. Sandra slammed on the brakes immediately, the truck skidding slightly before jerking to a stop. The reverse lights flared. The engine growled as she threw it into reverse and backed toward me with surprising precision. I made a run for the passenger side door, then hurled myself inside, chest heaving, soaked to the bone, flashlight still clenched in a trembling hand. Sandra didn't waste any time. She just threw it back into drive, made a sharp U-turn, then hit the gas. I immediately turned to look out the rear window. Nothing, just darkness and rain and the stretch of empty road we'd left behind. "What the hell was that?" she asked, finally, eyes wide and locked on the road. "I don't know," I managed to say, breathless, but it almost got me. It was seriously hurt. Its back leg was mangled, but it still came after me the second it saw me. No hesitation. "I think you just saved my life." Sandra just nodded. I continued. "I think it was the same thing that was stalking the area months ago. The one behind all those missing dogs. I recognized the smell. That same stench of rot and wet fur I caught near the tree line by our house once, back in June. Back then, I thought it was just a fox den. It was there, right behind the house, just a few yards from where Ellie plays every day. I saw it, Sandra. I saw it up close. That thing. It wasn't a normal animal, and it sure as hell wasn't just some dog. It looked somehow human, like it could stand up like a man, but the head was more like that of a wolf, a deformed, mutated one. I can't explain it." Sandra didn't offer a response. Neither of us spoke for the rest of the ride home. We never called the police. In fact, we never told anyone the truth. When friends asked what happened to the truck, I said we hit a deer. Big buck, late at night, poor visibility. Everyone nodded. No one questioned it. Around here, that kind of thing happens all the time. A few days later, Neil cornered me at the general store. A hunter claimed to have shot something strange in the woods, said it was tall, fast, and already injured when he saw it. He put 2 rounds in it. He took the sheriff out to show him the beast. The deputies bagged the carcass. Neil later called the DNR to try to find out what kind of creature it was. The woman on the line told him it was a wolf, plain and simple. Nothing unusual. Neil pushed her, said this thing didn't move like a wolf, didn't look like a wolf, but she just repeated it again. Definitely a wolf, and hung up. Neil spread that story all over town, but nobody cared about it anymore. I still can't get it out of my head, and maybe I never will. That's part of why we're leaving. Sandra and I have decided to move to Minneapolis. It wasn't an easy decision, but after seeing that thing with my own eyes, I don't think this town is safe. I can't risk raising my daughter within reach of something like that. If you ever hear rumors in your neck of the woods about dogmen, werewolves, Bigfoot, or whatever name people slap on what they don't understand. Don't laugh. Don't roll your eyes and chalk it up to campfire stories or crazy locals. Get a gun, lock your doors, and stay out of the woods.